You know what I like doing? Talking about stupid games nobody cares about and counting. Too bad I never really have many ideas that I want to dedicate myself to, or maybe I'm lazy or something, or suffering from intense brain rot. But hey, why not make a video on how I make videos? It's pretty fun aside from maybe getting the occasional stupid comment, your editing software crashing under pressure from intense gaming footage, and your monthly YouTube revenue only being just enough to afford a handful of Cinnamon Toast Crunch. I originally wanted to make this tutorial solely about making countdowns, but then I realized that only 5 people would click on that, and my editing process for those videos can obviously be applied to various video genres. Anyway, I did one of these years ago, but my methods have developed a lot since then, and I'd like to think I can make a more informative and fun sort of guide, I guess. I love talking about games in their own dedicated videos, or ranking various aspects about them together in a countdown, or just talking about one broad topic in a discussion video. So, why not share what I've learned for those curious? And who knows, perhaps this could help you with your YouTube endeavors as well. Maybe. Well, okay, so the reason why my upload schedule is pretty whack is partially due to this. Of course, some can make for a time-consuming editing process, and I take my breaks after finishing up a video, but one of the biggest challenges I face when making a video is finding something I actually want to talk about. Like, I've played a lot of games, and there's a ton of material for me to work with, but there are some things where I just don't know if I'm ready yet or not. Like videos talking about my favorite games, or really big countdown topics such as a favorite boss list or the like. Not to mention, even if I do have all of these games that I can talk about, then comes the question of whether or not I actually want to talk about it, or if I think I can add anything to the conversation. And also, there's no telling when I'll get the chance to talk about a certain part of a game, or a game in general, ever again. Like, I don't want to do a video about a game, mess a bunch of stuff up, and have that pretty much be the #1 representation of my opinion on that game. I'm always down to remake some of my old stuff, like I'm doing right now, but I'd rather not have to do that too often. As for countdowns, sometimes there's a part of a game, whether it's a moment, character, or level, that can only be brought up for that very specific countdown since it simply doesn't fit the topic of any other one that I do. So in that case, there might not be any do-overs. Though there's also the opposite case where there are a ton of opportunities to talk about it. A big recent example of this is the ending of The Witch's House, which I brought up in the video I made about that game. I abstained from talking about it there because I wanted to save talking about it for a huge future countdown, and I wanted that review to be simpler and shorter. I can think of literally like 2 more chances I have to talk about it, so to avoid redundancy, I want to say everything I want to say about it in one video. That, however, is a very specific case. It varies depending on what I'm talking about. What if I review a video game and do a summary of the story and have to, say, mention a twist villain? In the review, I'd probably talk about them for a little bit, but if that villain made it onto a top 10 favorite villains video, then of course they'd get a lot more attention dedicated to them. Is this a stupid mindset? I mean, it probably is, because I've never heard anybody talk about this before. I just want every video I make, whether it be a countdown, review, or discussion video, be its own beast and bring something brand new to the table every time. And something that's great is that depending on the topic, you can analyze a character or a part of a game in a different way, or if your opinion changes on something, then that just brings even more stuff to talk about. That was probably a lot to take in, and maybe a tad overwhelming, but oh, what can I say? I basically have an existential crisis when thinking about what to talk about next. Just some food for thought though, and if you think it's stupid, then, you know, you're probably correct. I just like each individual video of mine to be like a wide collection of my opinions on various games, like a music album or whatever. Granted, I guess that sort of goes for any content creator, but my point is that I want every video of mine to be special. Basically, it's hard as balls to come up with a topic, and it's honestly just as hard to get it off the ground. Oh boy, I can't wait to start scripting this new video idea of mine. Yeah, as if it wasn't hard enough to think of a video idea, writing about it isn't much easier. I typically am able to envision various points I want to make when I'm not writing, such as when I'm doing something mundane at work or whatever, but there's a lot of points I want to make sure I don't miss. And unfortunately, whenever I'm scripting a video, there are frequently things I want to mention in said video that I end up forgetting to bring up. So even if there's a lot of stuff to unpack with the topic, I still have a lot of trouble figuring out how to script the video. Not to mention debating with myself about what's relevant, how much to include before it stops being concise and focused, and most importantly, how I want to structure my video and the tone I want to take. It really depends on what games I'm talking about, but sometimes in a review, the story will get a lot of attention when I really want to talk about it. But how do I present it? Do I talk about the story throughout the review? Do I bring it up at the start and talk about the conclusion near the end? Or do I talk about the whole story first and then move on to the gameplay and stuff? The stories are really the only aspect that I consider how much time should be dedicated to, because the video is dedicated to that singular game, making it the perfect opportunity to get into the nitty-gritty details of the gameplay mechanics and whatnot. Meanwhile, the story and characters have a lot of chances to be brought up in countdowns and stuff. Some might disagree with this, which I completely understand, but I personally prefer going into more detail on characters in countdowns instead of reviews, since in the reviews there's a lot of other stuff there that I can talk about that I can't bring up otherwise. Also, how much stuff should I even explain? Sometimes in countdowns you'll notice how I won't spend all day discussing the context behind certain moments or describing the roles of specific characters, because if I did that for literally every game, then the video would be extremely long and risk becoming tedious. But even though I can't talk about everything in a single video, there are cases where I'm not going to pull any punches. There are characters and moments I want to talk about so much and are brimming with so many different layers that it's warranted to talk about them for extended periods of time. And as for the reviews, like I said, I'll talk at length about various aspects on it, but the amount at which I cover the story is constantly fluctuating throughout each review. So needless to say, it's actually really refreshing when I play a game with a really simple story, or no story at all, and that way the question of how much I should cover has a really easy answer. But that's just what I should include in the script. What about the tone and the way I go about describing it? I'm not a great writer. Sometimes I'll say too much, sometimes I'll say too little, and I've had a big issue with miswording my scripts and saying stupid stuff I never intended to say. Right now, I'm wondering if I'm being redundant or whatever with this mess of alphabet soup I'm spewing onto this Word document. But it's something that has to be done. Why does it say dumb in the script? But it's something that has to be done, because making a video without a script is like driving down to McDonald's to get a milkshake without your eyes. Also, as you can tell by the last few sentences I've spoken, then you'll know that I'm a real silly sausage. I like making dumb jokes that nobody aside from 4 other people will find funny. See, my generation was raised by the internet, and we find this stupid shit funny, so of course that translates into my videos. Although, even I feel like humor can become overbearing after a while, there are usually a lot of jokes that end up getting cut in my script when it comes time to record, simply because I realize that plenty of them just aren't that funny, or they're just way too many. What I'm about to say is extremely important, so please listen carefully. You don't have to try to be funny.
You're not funny.
Don't be funny just to try to make other people laugh. Be funny because you feel like it's appropriate or because you find it fun to crack jokes. I've seen so many of my favorite YouTubers have a good style going where they're pretty straightforward for the most part, but then at some point they try throwing in comedic edits and memes that totally clash with their script. That really hurts to say because writing a joke is one thing, but editing a joke can take a lot more time than other parts of the video, so when it completely misses the mark, it just feels like they wasted their time. So, like all the other parts of the video making process, do what works with you as a person and adjust the amount at which you tell jokes accordingly, if at all. Even then, there are times where I won't really joke at all and start speaking slower and more subdued. Like when I'm speaking fast and loud, I'm having a good time, but I like to dial it back a little bit whenever I'm making a really major point or talking about some serious subject matter, even if it is just a video game. Occasionally, I'll even write out instructions detailing the tone I should take when saying a certain line, or I'll record it and then realize, wait, I should have done that slower, or something like that. I just realized I'm beginning to delve into the part where we actually record the audio, so I might as well start talking about that. Now, up until this point, the only hardware you needed was a brain, which... I understand if it's hard to get a hold of one of those, especially nowadays. And also, I assume you're going to write your script in a Word document, or if you really hate your hands, you can use a pen and paper. Starting with the audio recording process though, you need a microphone. Now, I'm aware that most laptops have mics pre-installed into them, but don't. I've had more pleasant experiences listening to a Burger King drive-thru while shoving a drill into my ears. And I actually would give you a real example of how bad they are, but apparently Dell thought that pre-installed laptop mics were so cringe that they didn't even bother putting one in mine. But I suppose that I'm not missing out on anything. Point is, you probably should invest into at least a decent mic. For some of my really old stuff, I used a webcam mic, then upgraded to a headset mic that got the job done pretty well, but wasn't very comfortable. Then, starting with the Luigi's Mansion video, I started using a blue snowball. They'll run you around $40 to $60, and as for the quality, well, You've been listening to it this whole time. I'll probably upgrade it at some point, but it served me pretty well for how inexpensive it is. Plus, there are different settings on the back that drastically change the way it sounds, so you can change it to your liking. I'd use this one if I hated your ears. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty satisfied with it. It's not the greatest thing ever, but for the price, it's a really solid entry point. I asked some friends their opinions on the mic, and they seem to share the same sentiments as well. Also, invest in a pop filter. These things are really cheap, and they make the audio of your video better than you might initially think. They'll remove some background noise, and overall just make everything sound cleaner. Now, one important takeaway from this segment, however, should be that you do not need to throw a ton of money into a good microphone. It's really easy to get into the deep end with this stuff, like soundboards and whatever, and that's where a hole suddenly begins to form in your wallet. So if you're just starting out, don't break the bank over this stuff. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about actually recording your script. First things first, and this should go without saying, make sure there's absolutely no background noise whatsoever. I know that it might be tempting, but you can't just watch Family Guy while you're recording. And if you're like me and you live in a household with a bunch of other people, then please be respectful of them. I mean, if you have something like a studio or a recording booth where nobody else can hear you, then yeah, go ahead, and also I envy you. And if I'm going to yell because it's funny, I make sure to inform everyone beforehand that I'm yelling for the internet so they know that I'm not actually mad or hurt or something. I mean, I know, it's just common sense, but you'd be surprised at how many people are not self-aware of how obnoxious they are nowadays.
Security system takes control of Squidward's house.
I mean, I know I'm annoying, but you're willingly submitting yourself to my voice right now. Aside from all that, recording is a pretty straightforward process. There are programs such as Audacity to record your audio, but I personally prefer recording straight into my editing software due to it being simpler. I write all of my script on a Word document and then bring it up on my phone while recording. Recording the whole script can take a while, especially for a longer video, so I try to get it all done within 2 sittings or so. I like to get as much done as I can because there are a lot of annoying roadblocks whenever it comes to recording audio. Whether it's just not getting the opportunity to record, or even worse, getting sick. But for example, I remember finishing the script for Top 10 Beloved Games I Don't Like, but I wasn't able to record the audio for a solid week afterwards because I had a horrible sore throat. Not only did I not want to speak for prolonged periods of time, but also, who in their right mind would want to listen to that? Don't ever record if you're sick, even if you think you need to get work done. It's a lot more noticeable than you think, and you'll end up regretting it. As for other rules of thumb whenever you're recording, we went over the whole tone thing earlier, so keep that in mind and try to adjust your tone of voice for specific moments. But you know, depending on the type of person you are, the way you speak will vary greatly. But do remember that this is supposed to be fun, so just talk in a way that you like talking. I don't know about you, but I'm having the most fun whenever I'm speaking really fast while using unnecessarily large words. It's just really hilarious to me for some reason. Also, another big point is when you're talking about something negative. It can be fun to criticize parts of games we don't like, such as bad levels or characters or ranting about a terrible game altogether, but don't get too carried away. For entertainment purposes, it's okay to act upset about a thing in a game you don't like, but for the love of everyone watching, please don't get actually mad about a video game. There are times where I'll complain and act upset about things I don't like when recording, but trust me, I'm having the time of my life whenever I'm doing that. If you were there with me while I was recording that, then I'd have a big stupid smile on my face in between takes. You can play it seriously enough that people know you're just trying to be entertaining, but don't actually get heated. It's something a lot of old reviewers and countdown makers were really bad about, especially when it came to talking about characters where the whole point of them was that you were supposed to hate them. One last thing, I don't know if anyone else does this, but I won't always follow my script word for word. Occasionally I'll reword or ignore something I wrote down if I feel like it needs tinkering, or I'll add in a little more flavor text if I feel like that part of the video is getting dry. It's a good time to review the script right before incorporating it into the final product. Up next is one very important necessity that you have to do before or during the editing process. Obviously, if you're going to make a video, then you have to have footage to work with. For reviews, I typically use my own footage, unless if I'm unable to for whatever reason. For console stuff, I use an Elgato capture card. I've had some issues with the default software it comes with those, so sometimes I'll record the footage through OBS instead. OBS is also great for recording PC stuff, whether it's me randomly scrolling through a web page because I can't think of anything else to put in the video, or for recording footage of PC games. But you better get your mommy's credit card ready first, because it costs the humongous, tremendous, gigantic, bank-breaking price of free. Not the capture card though, that'll run you somewhere in the $100 range or so. I find it a lot more fun to use my own footage for reviews and whatnot, because then I can record really specific stuff, show you how I play the game, or maybe something stupid will happen while I'm playing, and then I can make a joke about it in the video. Now for countdowns and stuff, while it is somewhat feasible to record your own footage for it, it's extremely time consuming. In that case, you can typically find footage for the game on YouTube and then use a downloader to download the video file. But I must stress, and I might sound like a bit of a hypocrite whenever I'm saying this, but I do encourage you to credit the users that you're using footage from. And of course, if they explicitly state not to use their footage, then obviously don't. I will admit that I'm bad about this myself because I reuse footage a lot across multiple videos and I don't keep track of the users who recorded it. I've been trying to get better with that over time, but I still make plenty of mistakes whenever it comes to this stuff. I just feel like it's my responsibility to make sure that you're aware, that's all. Also, be careful whenever it comes to downloading sites, because a lot of them will have stupid pop-ups, and anytime I recommend one, it eventually gets taken down or goes bad. A lot of people I know, including myself, use 4K Video Downloader. It's a software you actually have to install, and the free version limits you to 30 downloads a day, but that's honestly pretty generous. I almost never use more than 10 because I'm slower than a grandma snail trudging through molasses whenever it comes to editing. But watch all this information become outdated 2 weeks after I post this video and 4K Video Downloader like explodes or something. Ugh, I hate footage hunting so much.
Oh, so you like to learn how to edit videos just like me?
No!
Oh yeah, now we finally get to the cool part. Editing. When I'm writing a script or recording audio, I get really nervous about how my video is going to turn out, but when I start editing, I get a lot more confident and really feel like the pieces start falling into place. As for editing softwares, well, there's always Windows Movie Maker. Actually, now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever booted it up on this computer before. Let me go check.
Bruh.
Wait, what? It's gone? How long has that been a thing? You learn something new every day, but I mean, it's not like we're missing out on much. For editing, I personally use Sony Vegas Pro 16, but for some of my older stuff, I use the Movie Studio Platinum 12, I think. A Vegas Pro is a more advanced version of that one, so switching over wasn't really a huge deal. Movie Studio was cheaper, but Vegas Pro has more features such as masking, which I need to get a better hang of, and there's probably even more there that I have yet to use. I recommend either one of these. If you're wondering, I've been using Vegas ever since top 10 least favorite bosses, but the only differences you'll be able to discern between that video and the ones before it come purely from me becoming a more experienced editor. Also, I recommend that you have a pretty solid PC if you're going to use them, because they are pretty prone to some issues such as infrequent crashes or the video preview lagging, the latter of which has caused me to miss mistakes that slip into the final product. To give you an idea, aside from old games that don't run well on modern hardware, I can typically run most high-end PC games at really high settings with almost no issues, yet I still get some lagging from Vegas. So what I'm trying to say here is that if you can't run Blue's Clues, Blue's Birthday Adventure, then you should just give up and kill yourself. I also have some friends who use HitFilm, which I'm personally not familiar with, but it seems to work out well for them. I know that Macs are pre-installed with iMovie, which I've heard is pretty decent, especially in comparison to what Windows had to offer in that department, but the downside is that you have a Mac. And a better version of that would be Final Cut Pro, I think, which I know is a humongous PP software. Only issue is, oh my goodness, maybe wait on that one. I mean, unless if you're going to... Yeah, as you can tell, I'm not very informed on softwares outside of the ones I've used. Sorry about that. So don't just take my word for this when looking for an editing software for yourself. Also, if you don't know how to edit, then well, I'm not a teacher or anything, but I found that just playing around with some video files on your software can get you pretty familiar with the process quickly. I've been using softwares like this ever since I was like 13 or 14, and I remember whenever I first got Movie Studio, I just messed around with some old plush videos of mine and having fun seeing all the cool stuff I could do. But for the love of Dr. Amigo, please refrain from using certain default stuff. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of transitions I'm cool with, but whenever I see someone use a stock text effect like this, then I die a little on the inside. The issue of these effects is that they try really hard to stand out, which only limits the ways they can appropriately be used. The rest of the editing process can be pretty simple though. Make sure that the footage matches up to whatever you're talking about, and also shuffle your clips often so that people don't get bored looking at the same long strand of gameplay for half a minute. Because if you're just going to put a long strand of gameplay over all of your audio, then it makes the video less charming and also loses some engagement. When you're talking about a full game, it's pretty easy to just shuffle footage around and stuff, though if you're talking about something specific such as a gameplay mechanic or character, it's more difficult due to the amount of relevant footage being reduced significantly. I'd say shift the footage around for every 1 or 2 audio clips, maybe 3 under a few circumstances, but the way you edit a video can vastly change depending on the style that you develop or the type of video that you want to make. Sometimes whenever I'm talking about broad topics, such as the gaming rumors video, it can be hard to find a ton of interesting footage for that. So instead, I like to play around for the limited footage I have and find a bunch of unique ways to display them using various effects, like making the screen darker, panning over the footage using keyframing, etc. Speaking of keyframing, that's one of the most important tools I have at my disposal. Anytime you see anything in my videos move, whether it's the footage or an image, that's through keyframing. I use it to make characters move in my skits, or zoom and pan the footage to focus on certain details. And after using it a lot, I appreciate a lot of people who have tons of images moving on the screen at once. It's a lot harder than you may think. That's pretty much the best I can say whenever it comes to editing. It can be a complicated and long process, and I know some people really hate it, but I personally find it quite enjoyable at times. It usually depends on what I'm editing, but the most fun thing about it is just seeing everything come together and the final product take shape. However, don't let all this overwhelm you. You don't have to do a bunch of wacky edits and whatnot. So long as your stuff is well written, detailed yet concise, and your editing is solid and has effort put into it, then your stuff will honestly turn out fine as is. Probably, hopefully. Like I said earlier, not everyone is funny or has the most impressive editing. Just be you and don't force anything out of yourself. You could also hire an editor if you have the money to spare, but I personally don't ever want to do that because, I don't know, I don't think they could ever capture the type of style I go for. And the way I edit is constantly changing depending on the topics, so yeah, I'd like to have full control over my stuff. But my opinion, it should not discourage you from hiring an editor. You do you. Anyway, after we're done, we gotta render the video. The project file that you've created is not actually a video file that you can upload raw. You have to render it as a video file. I do it as an MP4. I don't know what other viable formats there are. So in the meantime, make sure not to delete any important video or image files that are in your project before rendering it, or else that can cause a lot of problems and leave giant gaping holes in your hard work. Make sure to review the video before and after rendering to make sure that no mistakes make it into the final product and that no issues occurred while rendering, and you should be good to go. The final big part of a video is making a thumbnail and uploading it. Like a lot of aspects of video production, I find making the thumbnail to be the last big hurdle whenever it comes to making a video. I never actually settle on the thumbnail until I'm literally uploading the video because I just have so much trouble making them. When making one of these, I strive for them to get the point across while also clearly standing out, and unfortunately, I don't think that I'm very good at doing that. See, everyone can just put their avatar next to official art of the game and call it a day, but that might not attract many people outside of your audience. Like, think of the narrow video on Majora's Mask 3D, a famous example, but for good reason. The realistic eyes and lips on the moon are so out of left field and uncanny looking that it just imprints into your mind and you wonder, what cursed person made this? Personally, I typically like taking a screenshot of a good-looking cutscene or area from the game and building a thumbnail off of that. I must say, though, that my magnum opus whenever it comes to thumbnails is probably the Yokai Watch 3 one. Like, it's got everything. A colorful background, 2 iconic mascot characters, a bunch of random fish around them which are actually relevant, and lens flares for good measure. It's peak Luggo at its finest, and the video probably attracted some more views thanks to it. Oh yeah, and as for the software I use Paint.net, which is a great software for its low price of nothing! It gets the job done very well, has just about all of the tools you need, and whatever it's missing can be patched up using various plugins. I haven't touched any image software aside from this outside of Microsoft Paint, which, to be fair, you can make a realistic painting of Santa Claus using it, so yeah, it's definitely a viable thumbnail maker. It's not. More advanced software would include Adobe Photoshop, which I shouldn't comment on because I've never used it, but it's worth looking into because of its good reception. Anyway, once I finally rack my empty head for long enough and come up with a thumbnail, that's really it. The video's done. I don't really have an upload schedule, so I just upload it as soon as it's finished processing, and then I realized I don't have anything else to do with my life for the next few weeks. The last thing you really have to look forward to is the response. This is pretty important as people will let you know what you may have missed or messed up on. You're bound to make mistakes, and that's fine. Listen to other people's feedback so that you can learn what pitfalls to watch out for, and so that you can make your stuff even better. I've been doing this video stuff for a long ass time now, and I still make plenty of mistakes and don't elaborate on some of my points or say something stupid, but one of these days I'm going to iron all that out and hopefully start making some banger videos. And if you try hard enough, I hope you'll end up the same way. There's no telling how much of a splash your videos will end up making at first, and it is pretty discouraging when not a whole lot of people will watch your content that you put so many hours into. But if you truly do love making that content, then just keep pushing and you'll get somewhere. At the very least, I hope that you can make yourself proud. I'm not sure how much help this video will be, but like all of my content, I hope that at least some of it has made a bit of an impression on you or been entertaining. And you know, there's no telling whenever I'm going to do another one of these. Because my style has evolved so much over the past few years, it's like impossible to tell that I'm even the same person. But yeah, if this YouTube stuff sounds fun, then I highly encourage you to give it a shot and tell us about all of your favorite stupid games and whatnot. And of course, like I've stated, you do not have to follow this one-to-one. This is less of a guide and more so me explaining how I do my videos. So deviate from this as much as you want and tell us about some cool stuff. Anyway, I'm Luggo the Luggician, and thank you very much for watching.